I guess we should start calling him the uniter-in-chief, because with all the partisan battles going on in Washington, Donald Trump has managed to bring just about everybody together on one issue, taking a stand against his sudden weekend announcement that U.S. forces will pull out of northern Syria.
We've been in Syria for a long time, and it was supposed to be a very short hit, and a hit on ISIS, but it didn't work out that way. They never left. We defeated, this group largely, defeated ISIS, 100% of the caliphate.
Trump is ordering the removal of the last 50 to 100 troops on the border between Turkey and Syria, where they've been acting as a buffer of sorts along with Kurdish forces that have been fighting ISIS. But Turkey views the Kurds as terrorists, and without U.S. troops in the region, Turkish forces are likely to attack. So many are understandably concerned that not only could U.S. withdrawal lead to ISIS regaining strength in the region, it also sends a message to allies the U.S. will use them, then lose them, prompting members of both parties to speak out.
My colleagues on both sides of the aisle are very stupefied. I mean, where did this come from?
This impulsive decision by the president has undone all the gains we've made, thrown the region into further chaos. So to those who think ISIS has been defeated, you will soon see.
He's sending a message to our allies and our partners around the world that you can't rely on us, you can't depend on us.
Senate Majority Leader and usual Trump cheerleader Mitch McConnell also released a statement saying American interests are best served by American leadership, not by retreat or withdrawal. But the president is already hard at work calming fears, tweeting, "If Turkey does anything that I, in my great and unmatched wisdom, consider to be off limits, I will totally destroy and obliterate the economy of Turkey I've done before." Great and unmatched wisdom. Well, I, for one, feel better. Joining me are Rufus Gifford, former U.S. ambassador to Denmark and former finance director for the Obama reelection campaign. It's good to see you, Ambassador. And Middle East and North Africa consultant Nasser Weddady, who is son of the Mauritanian ambassador, spent much of his childhood in Syria. Nasser, it's great to see you again. Thanks for being here. As I said at the top, virtually nobody is defending Trump's move here. Would you defend it?
Oh, God, no. I'm sure you're shocked by that. But I think the context here is what's most challenging.
What do you mean?
It's that the decision was made impulsively, which is a shock to no one, but it was made right after a call with Erdogan, where from what I can tell, I think from what most of us can tell, he's just doing Erdogan's bidding here, that essentially the Turks got all they wanted, and frankly, the coalition didn't get anything.
In contravention of the advice of virtually all of his people at the Pentagon.
Whether or not they even offered their advice, I think that's another question. Whether he actually sought the advice of military leaders of our allies, it doesn't seem to me that he sought any of it.
Are there any pluses in this at all?
None. Absolutely, it's a disaster.
How is it a disaster?
U.S. allies in the region are looking at the situation, and again, remember what just happened recently with Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia was attacked by Iranian proxies, and part of the relationship with the Saudis that they guaranteed it for the last 70 years is that there's an unspoken rule that the United States will help defending Saudi Arabia. Trump did nothing. And before that, in the previous administration, there was the infamous red line. And so this is a succession of events that confirm a thought that America is an unreliable ally.
When Trump says he won't let anything bad happen to the Kurds, is that to be depended upon?
It's like hot air. What does that mean? It's like Trump comes out and tweets, and that's part of the problem, which no one knows exactly what he means and whether to take him seriously. He's legislating and running foreign policy by tweets. That's unheard of.
Well, also he talked about troop withdrawal, a couple thousand troops from Syria at the end of last year, and obviously did a 180 on that.
I would also say that you can't. The reason why you can't take him at his word as far as protecting the Kurds, is because everything he essentially said in that clip you just played is also not accurate. Yeah. It's not true. It misstates history, and so why
ISIS
would you?
Is not defeated.
That's right.
Not even close to it.
So what does this mean for ISIS going forward if Trump follows through on this?
His doing their bidding. He's telling them, we're going to cut and run. You guys just lay low till America's out, and then you can continue doing whatever.
There is virtual unanimity, as I said, amongst all parties on this thing, amongst all leaders in Washington, plus you two. What do you say to a Trump voter who says he promised us disentanglement from all of our commitments around the world? He's doing exactly what he promised us he would do.
I'll tell the fellow, the Trump voter and fellow American is listen to me, madam or sir. Understand that you're burned with the rest of the world and that you want nothing to do with the Middle East. But guess what? The world is a lot more complicated than simply pulling out on a whim, because if we pull out right now, there are going to be consequences down the road. And we've been down that road already in 2010. We pulled out of Iraq. Guess what happened? That's what the president then was elected to achieve. And then we got ISIS in exchange. The world is a dangerous place, and you cannot just pull out or come in at your whim. And you need to understand that we, as America, we're the most powerful nation in the world. We're not some little tiny country out there. We have a role to play in this world, but it seems to me that we as Americans, because of the successive foreign policy blunders, got confused about it and lost sight of that reality.
You know, you want to say something there?
Well, only in that I'd say this to the Trump voter. I'd say it's completely valid, whether you agree with it or not, valid foreign policy to say that you want to withdraw over time. The way he does it, to me, that is the impulsive way that he does it, without our allies, without his advisors. That's what's challenging to me. If you want to put a timeline, in essence, I think it could make sense. But
was it any more impulsive than when your former boss drew the red line, chemical weapons, and that's the final straw, and he did nothing? Barack Obama,
right.
obviously.
No, absolutely. Listen, I could, of course, sit here and defend American foreign policy under the Obama administration all day.
How about defending that piece?
Well, no, I think it's tough to defend. I really
If I
do.
may jump in, Mr. Ambassador,
please.
Actually, I'm on the record. I'm one of the biggest critics of Obama's foreign policy, particularly on Syria. But I'll tell you something. When President Obama did things, they were at least thought through. His red line.
He was wrong.
He was dramatically wrong, and we'll be paying the price for decades. But it was thought through. It was not an impulse.
And I don't disagree. Listen, I think there is plenty to criticize regarding Obama administration foreign policy vis-a-vis Syria. But I can speak about this firsthand because I had to go to, in my case, the Danes in 2014 and 2015 and ask for support, ask to build this coalition. And they sent their men and women, they sent their F-16s, they sent their special forces to fight alongside the Americans. And that's the point here, is that we did it arm in arm with our allies,
Yes.
80 coalition countries. We can quibble about the policy, without a doubt, and I think that's valid. But it was the way in which we did it, which is truly American. Yes. Whether you are Ronald Reagan or George W. Bush or Barack Obama, this is flying on our
Can we talk
coalitions?
Can we talk politics for a second here? And maybe you can explain to me why virtually no Republicans are willing to incur the wrath of Donald Trump when it comes to that phone call to Ukraine or the outreach to China, which, of course, now we hear was a big joke, even though it wasn't. But they are willing to criticize Donald Trump relentlessly on this move out of Syria. How do you explain why they're willing to take him on that and not willing to take him on in Ukraine?
Two things to take into consideration here. The number of Republican senators up for re-election in 2020. They don't want to upset the de facto head of the party.
That explains Ukraine, their silence.
Yes.
It doesn't explain their willingness to come forward almost unanimously on this.
But on this one, there's a political calculus, which is what the ambassador referred to.
Which is what?
The voters, like the average Trump-based voter, doesn't care about Syria and doesn't see it beyond simply like a Trumpian declaration of victory and faithfulness to the program. They don't care.
You buy that?
So I do. I'm going to give you a slightly more cynical and perhaps inaccurate, but about why.
It's a hell of an intro.
No. I hear you, but I'm nervous about this. I think all of this, this whole announcement, has allowed congressional Republicans to criticize the Trump administration without supporting impeachment. They know, in my mind, this has allowed congressional Republicans to speak out against the Trump administration, and they can voice their concerns and then fall straight in line on impeachment.
Maybe even with tacit presidential approval,
Absolutely.
which is what John King from CNN suggested.
You haven't heard him go after Lindsey Graham. Lindsey Graham's been quite aggressive against his policy on Twitter. If Lindsey Graham supported impeachment, you know that Donald Trump would have gone after him the same way he went after Mitt Romney. So to me, the political cynic in me believes there's something more there.
I want to stay on impeachment for just a second. I'm sure you have seen this Washington Post poll, which shows the most dramatic support for impeachment. Yet, should Congress have begun an impeachment inquiry of Trump? 58% to 38% yes. How about amongst parties? Republicans 28%, which may not sound like much, but it's up from 7% just 3 months ago. And then they go on to say, should the House vote to remove Trump? Obviously, that's a stupid question since they can't remove Trump. But should they essentially impeach him? And it's almost 50%, 49%. I want to get back to what you both said about impulsive decision-making. Talk about cynicism. Is it possible this wasn't nearly as impulsive vis-a-vis his talk with the Turkish leader, but rather a distraction? And he is the master of distraction. The numbers are coming against me. Let's distract the American public with this. Is that possible?
I hope
not.
I hope not either, but it's connected to the point I just made, that this is a political calculation, maybe above and beyond anything else. And that's what terrifies me. The idea of American foreign policy being politicized the way it has been by our ambassador to the EU, by what I'd say Mike Pompeo, by Bill Barr, by Donald Trump. It's un-American. It's un-American.
The ambassador to the EU who's supposed to testify today,
that's
but
right.
obviously was stopped by the State Department.
For me, the question comes in multiple iterations. Like, my job is to worry and look at threats. And when this decision to withdraw is announced, is made or it's announced, what popped up immediately in my mind when I heard the news is that, okay, so what about the 12,000 ISIS prisoners that the Kurds are holding? Are these guys going to be circulated back into nature? What is all of this time, years, and money, and lives lost fighting ISIS? Is that going to be thrown by the way?
So what conclusion do you draw?
I am afraid, and I am very concerned because, again, foreign policy decisions like this one have consequences that come in time. It could ultimately, it's eroding confidence in American leadership around the world. And guess what? Down the road, it could come back to haunt us as many other unfortunate foreign policy decisions have in the past.
Nasser, thank you. It's good to see you again. Thanks so much, Ambassador. Pleasure as always. Great to see you.